February 1943 year, Tunisia, North Africa. The Wehrmacht's 10th Panzer Division occupies the high ground, but Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg considers this maneuver too dangerous. He is stationed there at the behest of the Führer, who has ordered this point to be held at all costs in order to maintain a strategic advantage over Allied forces. Klaus believes the opposite, that this very location would make the Panzer Division an ideal target for airstrikes. While he had previously doubted this, he is now convinced that the Führer is leading Germany to collapse and chaos, and that his promises to the German people are not being fulfilled. Klaus believes that the crimes committed by the SS troops have tarnished the honor of the army, and therefore he is disillusioned with Hitler and his policies that exterminate civilians. However, Klaus doesn't know a single Wehrmacht officer who could object to the Führer, so the colonel wants to dedicate his future service to a noble cause, saving lives, even if he has to do so secretly. Klaus convinces the tank division commander to retreat from this area, citing a water shortage as the reason in reports. Klaus assures him that he will help falsify the report, and the general agrees to retreat. Suddenly, Stauffenberg hears the first anti-aircraft gunshot, then Allied aircraft destroy most of the armored vehicles and personnel, and seriously wounded Klaus only miraculously survives. On March 3, a high-ranking Wehrmacht officer manages to deliver explosives to Hitler's plane in the form of a gift disguised as alcohol. The conspirators' plan fails, the fuse fails, and the Führer survives. A few days later, the conspirators learn that one of their members has been arrested by counterintelligence, so they urgently need a new accomplice. Klaus's wife, Nina, arrives at the hospital after his operation and learns that the colonel has lost an eye, his right arm down to his forearm, and 2 fingers on his left hand. Later, Klaus presents medals to the surviving soldiers, who, like the colonel, will remain crippled for life. A piece of iron is not worth a broken life, and Klaus becomes completely disillusioned with the nation's leader and his unwillingness to admit military defeat. General Albrecht, who recently learned of the colonel's radical views, arrives at the hospital. Klaus tells the general that the only way to serve German people is to become a traitor and remove the Führer, as Germany's defeat becomes more and more obvious with each passing day, and the consequences for the population are increasingly devastating. Albrecht invites Klaus to a meeting of the conspirators, consisting of high-ranking generals and popular politicians. Klaus asks, what will all these respected men do if they succeed in eliminating Hitler? After all, there's Himmler and Goebbels, a group of SS troops, and all these forces will sweep away a handful of conspirators in suits. Klaus is certain that no one present today will be allowed to simply walk into the late Hitler's office and end the war, so a centralized, coordinated, and well-thought-out plan of action is needed. That evening, Klaus arrives home, where Nina and her children greet him. It's hard for his wife to see Klaus crippled, but she's glad her husband is alive. The lights flicker, and soon Stauffenbergs hear the first explosion, Allied air forces attacking the city. The family goes down to the basement to wait out the bombing. In these anxious moments, Klaus hears Wagner's opera, The Ride of the Valkyrie, playing from the living room, and the colonel comes up with an idea for how to overthrow Hitler. The current Valkyrie plan calls for the mobilization of reserve troops stationed in all 19 districts, including those captured, in case of possible uprisings or mass revolts within Germany. This plan is designed to preserve the Nazi regime if the Führer is killed and anti-Hitler sentiment begins to spread. Klaus tells the resistance members that Hitler signed the plan, meaning there's a chance to amend the document in favor of the conspirators and resubmit it to Hitler for signature. Then, Hitler can be eliminated by blaming the SS group, giving the resistance generals the opportunity to declare martial law and order Wehrmacht troops to arrest the SS group. But before declaring the SS traitors, it's essential to be certain that Hitler is dead and to obtain the approval of General Fromm, commander of the reserve army. Klaus and Albrecht try to recruit Fromm, but the general first points out that all officers present have sworn an oath to the Führer. In reality, Fromm wants to be on the winning side and tells his officers that he is loyal to Hitler as long as Führer lives. In other words, Fromm will join the conspirators and move the reserve army in their interests once Hitler is assassinated. Later, Klaus rewrites the Valkyrie plan so that the most combat-ready units are stationed in Berlin, which, once captured, would allow the resistance generals to control the entire country. Also, to avoid conflicting orders from Himmler and the new resistance administration, Klaus needs to cut off the Wolf's Lair, Hitler's bunker, from all communication with the outside world after the Führer's assassination. To this end, Klaus attempts to recruit the Wehrmacht's chief of communications, Feldgiebel, but receives no clear answer. Klaus is appointed not only as chief of staff of the reserve army but also as the person responsible for the combat phase of Operation Valkyrie, which the resistance is preparing. The colonel will be the main coordinator and starting point. In his new position, Klaus can now communicate with Hitler's advisors and attend meetings at the Wolf's Lair. Later, Hitler signs the updated Valkyrie plan, citing Klaus as an example for the other officers, as he has given so much for his country and continues to serve it. The resistance members complete their preparations and organization so that Klaus's quick first trip to the Wolf's Lair meeting will be the day Operation Valkyrie is announced. To this end, Klaus is armed with a nearly kilogram block of plastic explosive, enough to destroy all the bunker's inhabitants. Since the bunker itself is windowless and constructed of reinforced concrete, the most fortified location in Germany could instantly become the grave of all high-ranking SS officers, including the Führer. The specialist also explains that the explosives will be detonated by a detonator with a 15-minute delay. Klaus is tasked with simultaneously eliminating not only the Führer but also Himmler, the head of the SS, to prevent him from interfering with the resistance's plans. That evening, Klaus tells Nina about the upcoming events. She, aware of the risks, blesses her husband for this heroic deed and then leaves Berlin with their children. Klaus understands that he is risking everything, as his family will be found if he fails, but there is no turning back. The Führer must be stopped. On the 15th of July 1944, Klaus, armed with explosives, flies to a meeting in Rastenburg, East Prussia, where Hitler is located. Meanwhile, Albrecht, without permission from his superior, General Fromm, has declared a military alert, mobilizing reserve units. However, during the meeting in the Wolf's Lair, Klaus doesn't see Himmler and calls resistance headquarters for an answer to eliminate Hitler alone. While the colonel waits for an answer, the Führer leaves the meeting. Reserve Army Commander Fromm is furious, because without his knowledge, his deputy, Albrecht, had declared a military alert. Fromm, nearly losing his position, warns Klaus and Albrecht that if they exceed their authority again, they will be court-martialed. Later, the resistance learns that Himmler has issued an arrest warrant for one of them. The danger of being discovered is growing, so Klaus must ensure that Hitler's next meeting is his last at any cost. On the 20th of July 1944, Klaus prudently cuts himself while shaving. Arriving at the Wolf's Lair, the colonel sees Feldgiebel, the head of communications, and tells him he has a very important call awaiting him. Even if Klaus is at the meeting, he must not miss this call. Klaus shows the SS major his bloody collar and asks for a room to change. There, Klaus and his adjutant arm the explosives, and the colonel places them in his officer's bag. Afterward, the SS major escorts Klaus to the meeting, and the colonel learns that today it will be held not in the bunker but in the summer house, due to the heat. The presence of windows and wooden walls significantly reduces the explosive's effectiveness, but there is no turning back. The device will detonate in 10 minutes, and Albrecht is waiting for the alarm signal. Klaus tells the SS major that he is hearing poorly after being wounded and asks to be given a place closer to the Führer. Klaus places the bag of explosives under the table, but he can't leave the meeting without a reason, as it would be too suspicious. The minutes of waiting with the bomb under his feet seem like an eternity, and he's nervous, but Feldgiebel takes Klaus's side, and he tells the colonel that he has an important call. Klaus leaves the meeting and goes outside. A minute later, a powerful explosion occurs, and the colonel hurries with his adjutant to the car. The alarm sounds in the wolf's lair, and Valkyrie informs Olbricht of the explosion, then disconnects all communication channels. Olbricht is afraid to sound the alarm again without clear confirmation from Klaus that Hitler is dead, so Olbricht goes to lunch, and then his first assistant personally issues the order for the alert and general formation. Later, Klaus calls Olbricht and confirms he saw the explosion, meaning it's time to declare Operation Valkyrie. Olbricht can't do this without the approval of the reserve army commander, but Klaus reminds him that the point of no return has been passed. Must join the resistance or be arrested, so Klaus arranges a meeting with Olbricht at the reserve army headquarters in 15 minutes. Olbricht signs the Valkyrie plan and distributes it throughout Germany. Klaus and Olbricht arrive at From's and inform him that Hitler is dead. From, unconvinced of the Führer's death, calls the Wolf's Lair, where communications have been restored. The SS general informs From that the Führer is alive and that this was just another failed assassination attempt. The SS general is also looking for Klaus as a suspect, as the colonel was seen without his bag and was the only one unharmed among those invited to the meeting. Klaus is the first to leave the Wolf's Lair, so the SS general demands that From arrest the colonel. Klaus is certain the Führer is dead, otherwise Hitler himself would have responded to From right now. From refuses to join the resistance, and the officers arrest him. Wehrmacht troops cordon off the government district and take high-ranking officials and SS officers into custody. The police chief arrives at Klaus's headquarters and says they will assist the resistance. All the conspirators gather in the headquarters reception area, and Klaus thanks them for their support. He is inspired and optimistic, as the first part of his plan worked. Now, the second is to purge the SS headquarters and take control of all districts. Klaus wants Hitler's Germany to never see the light of day again. For the next few hours, resistance signalers spread word of the Führer's death, while Klaus calls the districts, from where he receives widespread support. 2 orders arrive simultaneously at the Central Communications Center. The first, from the Wolf's Lair, is to arrest Klaus von Stauffenberg. The second order to arrest Goebbels is signed by Klaus. In Berlin, the signalman on duty remains neutral, sending all the radiograms in a row, but after a few hours, he finally sides with the SS, delaying Klaus's orders. The commander of an infantry regiment arrives at Goebbels' residence to arrest him, but Goebbels merely hands the major the telephone receiver, and he freezes, hearing the voice of Hitler. The Führer orders the arrest of all conspirators, and the major returns to Berlin. News of the Führer's survival spread far faster than radiograms from resistance headquarters, so, over the next few hours, Klaus's support begins to wane. One by one, the district commanders refuse to speak to the colonel, or even declare their allegiance to Hitler. Previously arrested officials and SS soldiers are released, and Operation Valkyrie is officially cancelled. The radio reports an unsuccessful assassination attempt on Hitler, who suffered only minor injuries. Klaus cannot believe what is happening, and repeats aloud to everyone present, he saw the explosion, Hitler could not have survived. Olbricht is the first to break down and apologizes, then retreats to his office. One by one, the resistance members leave the government building. Soon only Klaus, his adjutant, and a couple of generals remain. Towards nightfall, all remaining resistance leaders are arrested, and the freed general From assumes command and immediately orders the execution of all conspirators without trial or investigation. One of the resistance generals asks for a pistol and immediately takes his own life without leaving the headquarters building. Olbricht, Klaus von Stauffenberg, and his adjutant are led out into the courtyard and shot. Klaus's last words are, "Long live, Sacred Germany." The police chief and chief signalman Valkyrie will also face the death penalty. Later, at the trial, one of the resistance generals tells the judges that they have the right to hand over the rebels to the executioner, but 3 months later, the dispossessed people will still call the SS to account and drag them alive through the filthy streets. 10 months later, in March 1945, General From will be arrested and executed, as the authorities will discover that he knew about the plot being prepared. This was the 15th known unsuccessful assassination attempt on Hitler.